The Fisherman's Wish. Long ago, in a quiet coastal village nestled between tall cliffs and the open sea, there lived an aging fisherman named Elias. His days began before the sun rose, walking along the worn path to the shore, his heavy boots crunching against seashells and wet sand. He carried a net slung over his shoulder and a heart full of old memories. Elias lived alone in a weathered cottage at the edge of the beach. The wooden house had once been filled with laughter and warmth, but now it echoed with the sighing of the wind and the soft rustle of waves. His wife Mara had passed away many winters ago, and their only child Tomas had been lost to the sea during a storm that came without warning. Since then, Elias had spent his days fishing, not for fortune but for solace. The villagers often spoke kindly of him, saying he had salt water in his veins and a patience as deep as the sea itself. Children would run to hear his stories. Tales of giant sea turtles, whirlpools that swallowed ships, and creatures with glowing eyes in the depths. He told the stories with a quiet smile, but when he returned to his cottage each evening, silence greeted him. For years, his fishing nets had grown lighter. The sea, once generous, had become more elusive. He still woke every morning and tried, but most days he returned with little more than seaweed and driftwood. Still, Elias whispered his prayer each time he cast his net. Just one good catch. Just one more chance. One morning, the sea lay flat and mirror-like beneath a sky streaked with gold. Something about it felt different. Elias set out in his old boat, the Starling, and let it drift farther than usual, drawn by a strange pull. The village faded behind him, swallowed by mist. The sun climbed higher, but the water remained unnaturally calm. He cast his net again and again, but it came up empty each time. The hours passed. The silence around him was so complete that even the cries of gulls seemed to vanish. Just as he was preparing to turn back, a sudden force yanked the net with such strength that Elias nearly toppled into the water. He braced himself, arms trembling, and pulled with all the strength he had left. Out of the depths came a splash of silver and turquoise. Tangled in the net was not a fish but a being Elias had only heard of in sailor's lore. A sea spirit, shimmering with scales like moonlit pearls, its long hair flowing like kelp in the current. Its eyes were vast and ancient, and its voice echoed like waves in a cavern. "Release me, fisherman," the spirit said, "and I shall grant you a single wish." Elias stared in awe, unsure if he was dreaming. The stories told of the sea people, guardians of the ocean, appearing only in moments of deep need or great fortune. He had never believed them until now. "You would grant me a wish?" he asked quietly. The spirit nodded. "But only one. Choose wisely." Elias thought of wealth, of youth, of calm waters and full nets. But none of those things filled the hollow space in his heart. He closed his eyes and whispered, "I want to see them again. My wife. My son. Just one day. That's all I ask." The spirit regarded him with a look of sorrow and respect. "A day with those you've lost is a rare gift. The sea does not give without cost. But your heart is true. So it shall be." The spirit dissolved into mist and foam, and the net fell empty into the boat. Elias sat in stunned silence. Then, without a word, he turned the Starling back toward home. That night, he sat by his cold fireplace, staring into the shadows. Outside, the wind whispered through the grasses, and waves brushed gently against the shore. Sleep came slowly, carrying him deeper than it had in years. When Elias opened his eyes, the world had changed. Sunlight streamed through clean windows. The scent of fresh bread wafted from the kitchen. There were flowers on the table and voices, laughter soft and familiar. He sat up, heart pounding. Standing at the hearth was Mara, her dark hair braided down her back, her smile the same as it had been the day they wed. "You're up late," she said, her voice musical. "Come on, the tea is hot." Elias rose, barely able to believe what he saw. He reached for her, and she felt real, warm, solid, alive. "Mara," he whispered. She touched his cheek gently. "Yes, love. Who else would it be?" Before he could answer, a small boy ran in from the doorway, cheeks red from the morning air. "Papa, you promised we'd go to the cliffs today. You said we'd look for tide pool crabs." Elias dropped to his knees, arms open. The boy flew into his embrace. He smelled of salt and sunlight, and the faint trace of wild mint. "Tomas," Elias choked out. "My boy." The day passed like something out of a dream. They picnicked on the cliffs, hunted for shells in the sand, and shared old stories by the fire. Mara sang while she cooked, and Tomas built little boats from driftwood. Elias watched them both, eyes never dry for long, cherishing every sound, every smile, every glance. He asked the questions he had never dared before. He apologized for the things he left unsaid. And he held them both close, afraid to blink and lose the moment. As the sun began to sink into the horizon, painting the sky in streaks of orange and purple, a quiet understanding settled in Elias's chest. This was the day he had wished for, and it was ending. He sat with Mara and Tomas on the beach, the waves brushing gently at their feet. Mara leaned her head against his shoulder. "You knew this couldn't last forever." "I did," Elias said, his voice low. "But I hoped maybe. You used your time well," she said softly. "You gave us your whole heart. That's more than many do in a lifetime." Tomas turned to him, eyes gleaming like the sea. "We're not really gone, Papa. We'll always be here." He placed a small hand on Elias's chest. "Here." A wind stirred, soft at first, then growing stronger. The sky darkened, and the tide pulled farther out. When Elias looked again, Mara and Tomas were fading like sea mist under the sun. "No," he whispered, reaching for them. "Please, just a little more time." But they were gone. He woke in his chair by the fire, the room cold again, the bread basket empty. Outside, the wind moaned low, and the waves crashed like distant drums. The cottage was as it had always been. But something inside Elias was different.